The Renault Duster is back, and so are we. Welcome to this week's edition of Deep Drive, powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime, where we talk about Renault's new comeback SUV. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
And I'm Sergius Barretto. And indeed, Hormazd, it is back and with a bang. I mean, you were there with Jay at the event and in a stadium. I think was this the largest event you've ever been to?
It was the largest event, and in fact, Renault are billing it as the world's largest car launch. I think they were trying to get it kind of validated by Guinness.
Okay.
But I think there was some technical reason why they couldn't. Guinness wanted some data which they couldn't supply in such a short time. And so really 15,000 people, that's what Renault says, all stakeholders, the employees, suppliers, vendors, dealers, all of us in the media. And it was really mega. It was really like a concert style, with the kind of, lit up wristband and everyone wearing it. And it was just, having these superb lighting effects in the stadium. And it was amazing, like fireworks, like literally pyrotechnics going off.
Right.
They spent a bomb, and I know how much they spent. They spent 12 crores on this launch.
Wow.
So really to make a statement that not only is the Duster back, but Renault is here with a lot of intent and commitment to kind of, let's say, Renault 2.0 right now, in a way, so to take a leaf from Volkswagen. But this is really Renault saying that we've been in India, but now we really mean business.
Absolutely. And I think these signals, we saw them happening just over the last year. They took over the plant completely. It's no longer a joint venture plant with Nissan. They've got the largest design center outside of Paris, their home country, in India now.
That's right.
They've clearly invested in this country. And I think rightly so. For them, it is one of, I think 4 or 5 of the strategic markets. They aren't present in the US.
Exactly.
Russia, they're no longer there, thanks to, of course, the war. So India is now suddenly very important and should be for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is important. But more than that, I think it's the Duster, which is really, a product which really built Renault in India. It was our 2013 car of the year. Really, it kind of started an all-new segment, quite revolutionary at that time.
Yeah.
Not quite the first monocoque SUV, but first monocoque 5-seater. Don't forget we had the XUV 500 just a year before that. But clearly it was that started the trend. And, I think, of course, Renault started it. Creta has gone on to dominate it, but Creta's domination will also be an issue, which we'll come to as well, because, they're under pressure with all these launches. But I think for Renault, this is really, how do I say, their next phase. Right. Renault 2.0, if you want to take a leaf out of how Volkswagen kind of, let's say, christens the next inning. Right. But for Renault, this is really a big deal. And I think the Duster is spearheading Renault's charge into India.
No, absolutely. And the old Duster, like you correctly said, it started, it kickstarted that segment, let's say, the 5-seater mid-size, which is proven to be the right size. And you've got 14 or 13 models today in that segment.
Exactly. Yeah, amazing how competitive they come. And, it is the right size, the sweet spot, not too big, not too small.
Right.
I think earlier everyone wanted them as big as possible. But as we've seen with, more congestion, with buildings having, or societies having parking issues, there is a virtue in being just that little bit smaller.
Exactly.
And, just the right size. So I keep saying not too big, not too small.
Right.
That's really the sweet spot of the Indian car market. And the Duster, which started it, is now kind of jumping back into it with a lot more competition. So it's not going to be easy. Right. But I think, they've got a legacy to ride on.
Yeah, and Hormazd, what a legacy that old Duster really, started and is still today. You look at, first of all, sales, right? Always a good indicator of a successful product. It sold about 2 lakh units, and at that time had a petrol and diesel. Diesel was about, I think, possibly 90% at that time. But on the total sales that it ever did in India, I believe 70% was still diesel, even after diesel was just...
That's a bit misleading, because after diesel went, I think for the next 2-3 years,
2 years
it was only pure petrol.
Petrol, of course. But despite that, it's still 70% diesel.
Yeah, exactly.
It really sold well.
So I think really big shoes to fill for the new Duster. I think there were some attributes of the Duster that really made it special. Number one was the K9K diesel.
Right.
I think everyone loved that.
Right.
I think that's one thing that new Duster, let's say, buyers are going to miss. Because, at this event, They had invited a lot of the gang of Dusters customers as well. It was great meeting them. And when you talk to them, they're all diesel owners, from the 85 horsepower HP diesel to the 110 THP K9K 1.5, all Duster owners. A lot of them had 4x4s, which again is not over here, which we'll come to in a bit.
Yeah.
But I think that diesel was so synonymous with the Duster.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that I think Duster owners could miss. Don't forget, diesel is still very prevalent in this segment. We talked about the Sierra having 50% of their demand being diesel.
Too. Same with Creta.
Yeah, so Creta maybe a little less, not 50, but 40s, in the mid 40s. Yeah. So diesel very much, let's say an intrinsic part of this segment, and this is what owners want. Of course, they've got a lot more, and I think while we are leading into what the old Duster had, which I think may be missing in the new one. I think the other thing which I really liked on the old Duster was a very low window line. So you get fantastic outside visibility. This one has a higher window line, and I was talking to Lawrence Vandenacker, who designed it, and he said, yeah, you're right. But, he said sometimes now design takes precedence, and, from a design point of view, he had a kind of slightly, it looks sportier, having a slightly high belt line, and clearly that was what it was. But I think, again, coming to the looks, superbly proportioned. I think it's just a super looking vehicle. It has all the Duster DNA in the design. It's got that tough look.
Right.
You can't deny it's anything but looking very, very tough.
Yeah.
That high bonnet, really chunky kind of, let's say, dimensions.
Right.
Maybe it misses out on the oldest Duster's massive track. The
flare
track,
arches.
Yeah, the track was huge in the old Duster, and that was one of the reasons of really its phenomenal ride and handling. But there was a negative to it because of that wide track. The steering knuckle arms were quite extended. You had that terrible kickback of that hydraulic steering. But again, that's all gone. You've got electric steering, new engines, new gearbox. So really, I think this is really a lot of tech in this Duster as well, which I think some of it really surprised us.
No, absolutely, Hormazd. You're right. The flared wheel arches and that wide track actually made the old Duster slightly wider than the current one on paper.
Yeah.
And if I look at the dimensions, if you look at the new versus the old, it's right about there. The trend is with every generation, companies just make the next car bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
This one hasn't done that, right?
No,
and
no.
What did it look like to you? I mean, does it physically look smaller or bigger? Or
No, I think honestly, it doesn't visually look smaller. I think, again, the design has been fantastic. You've got that very high bonnet, that very prominent grille as well. So you really, I think design elements make it look much bigger than it is. But you're right. When I sat in at the back, to be honest, rear seat space isn't class leading, far from it. But it's comfortable, very sorted. So I think, as you said, let's say this segment has grown bigger.
Right.
And now we have two cars, which is the Sierra, which has outstanding rear seat comfort, probably the best in the segment. And you've got the Seltos as well, which has again grown with one generation.
That's their wheelbase.
So I think, here the Duster has come into a segment which is generally growing, and it is, in terms of, let's say, space and dimensions, smaller than the competition. Now, clearly there's a flip side to that as well, or, people want more space that they do. But I think, again, from a driving dynamics point of view, it's going to kind of really play to that agility and compactness, which, let's say, cars like the Kushaq and Taigun really excel at. Those are also on the smaller side of the segment, but dynamically they are brilliant. And I think the Duster, in my sense, is really going to be in that vein. And another factor, I think, which is quite crucial, I notice, is the tire size. They're using a 55 profile taller tire. So I think, again, the Duster ride and handling, yes, but the Duster excelled on bad roads. I think the worse the roads get, the Duster would do well. And I think on really bad roads, the Duster is going to excel. Combination of the suspension, a combination of the chassis, and even the fact that they have gone with a slightly higher profile. They have kind of, let's say, focused on ride comfort on bad roads. Because at the end of the day, the tire sidewall, in certain circumstances, is the only line of defense. So I think that's what they've gone for. Of course, there could be a compromise in the sharpness of the steering. But I think what they said is they worked with the tire manufacturers to get that stiffness also a bit in the sidewall without compromising comfort, to make sure that the handling isn't compromised either.
And Hormuz, I think Renault have done the same thing with the feature list, because from what I've seen, okay, they've not done, the triple screens and, what everyone's doing on the wild stuff, but they've got all of the basics. So you've got the panoramic sunroof, which is a basic, weirdly enough, today. You've got
360-degree camera.
360-degree camera. You've got a powered tailgate. You've got powered front seats.
Ventilated seats.
You've got Google built in now, which is actually unique.
That is very unique, and I think that's really a good piece of tech where you've got Google kind of interlaid on their map. Yeah.
So you can sign in with your own ID in your own car. So I think they've kind of balanced it. I would say not gone overboard. Certainly not class leading in the spec sheet either. But very well equipped. ADAS too, which is now getting to be quite popular.
Exactly. They've got all the right equipment. And Serge, is very interesting the way they've approached this car. Let's be honest, I think Indian manufacturers, to compensate for the lack of the depth of engineering that a lot of these global players have, they really kind of pamper and indulge the customer with fantastic features, something which is 2-3 segments above it. Mahindra has been absolutely ace at doing it and very successfully. Tata's followed suit with, let's say, the Sierra, 3 screens, heads-up display.
Right. Exactly.
The kind of, even the textures and materials they use are very, very rich. So the Duster's cabin doesn't feel as rich as, let's say, even a Sierra's does. But, it's very well thought out, ergonomically good. I mean, I think even some of the detailing is fantastic, like the cross-stitching, on the dashboard in yellow, really beautifully offset, really well done, good quality. Some of the plastics lower down, still very hard plastic. So you can tell they haven't really overspent over there, kept a nice balance. But, honestly, I think with this car, looking at it, that it's going to be all about the driving. And that really is that legacy, which I think more than any other global brand, Duster has that. I mean, Volkswagen doesn't have that. Let's say Honda had that, but they don't have any of those models coming here now. Nissan doesn't have that. So all these kind of marginal brands really didn't have, let's say, a big kind of a hero of the past to kind of, let's say, bring back and build on that.
No, Hormazd, that's really interesting when you said it's not top-notch in terms of richness, but it is top-notch Duster, because this is a Dacia Duster. It is a Renault Duster as well in, I think, Australia.
Yeah.
But Stefan, at the launch, he made it a point to say that the India Duster is the best Duster that we build globally.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. No, you're right. I mean, Stefan Deblaise CEO of Renault India, made that point. And I think it's a very valid point, because clearly it shows that, what works in Europe and something, specifically very popular in East Europe, that was not going to work over here. And they had to really uplift it. So as I said, I think they've really done good stuff.
Good balance.
Very good balance. And I think they've wisely spent their money on some of the mechanicals and the engines and powertrain, which I think, is fantastic. So I think possibly even the Duster customer, I mean, as I said, we met a lot of them. Of course, they're going to miss the diesel. I think they will love the petrol, which again is a state-of-the-art petrol, which we'll come to in a bit. So I think, I think it's all about what a typical Duster customer is. And I think he's not going to be that guy who wants all these frills. He'd rather have a car that drives brilliantly.
Right. Or more, if not a car enthusiast, at least more car aware is what this customer is.
Right? Car aware, I think people who buy these cars are going to be doing a lot of long distance trips. They're going to be the more outdoorsy type.
Correct.
And Sergius, the big surprise is that the Duster comes with a 7-year warranty. Now that is an industry first and really shows the commitment of Renault.
And Hormazd, let's get to the mechanicals, because the new generation Duster, it is built on the new platform, the CMF BLS platform. The old one was on the M0. And of course, with this platform, like you said, comes in the new powertrains. And, we've got 3 of them now, including a strong hybrid.
So I think, the specification for India, I don't think one can say there's any compromise on quality, because there are differences. So I think in terms of crash and safety, now everyone's realized that 5-star has become hygiene, and they've said that they're going in for that, and that's what they aim to achieve.
Right.
I think where they will, let's say, not be to the European spec is for winter conditions.
Right.
Maybe even a bit of corrosion, because the salt over there is highly corrosive, which is not so much over here. So I think these are the areas where there are differences between the European platform and the Indian platform. But I think where it's gone even beyond Europe right now is with the ENE, or the electrical architecture. Because there are so many features, you need a absolutely high-powered electrical system to kind of really give the firepower to all these features. So I think that also has been upgraded. So I think, they've really put a lot into this vehicle. I think they've really kind of given it a lot of thought. Of course, as I said, limitations in size are there, but that can be a virtue as well. And I think really the talking point for me are the powertrains, because that really is the heart of the car.
Right, absolutely, Jonas. I mean, 3 powertrains. So we've got, of course, the 1 liter, it's a 3-cylinder, 100 horsepower engine. Now, that's not going to be, obviously the one for the drivers, but you've got a 1.3 liter, 163 horsepower, turbocharged direct injection. And I think this engine, we have to point out that it is developed, Mercedes use it.
Nissan, Renault, Mercedes, part of that alliance.
Exactly.
And I think you had a derivative, or let's say an earlier gen of this in the previous Duster, which was mated to a CVT.
Right.
But this has been taken to the next level. So I think talking to the engineer, they said the block is the same, but a lot of other things have changed. So 250 bar injection pressure. You've got let's say extra cooling. Friction has been reduced.
Yeah.
All the latest electronics, to meet emissions. Now, an upshot of that is with that comes more power and efficiency. It's a lot more refined. So really, in effect, practically a new engine, though the block is just common. And I think if you look at the, let's say power output also, I think it's 162 horsepower,
163 horsepower, 280 Nm torque.
From 1.3 liters. That is amazing. I mean, if you look at it, we always used to look at the VW 1.5
right.
TSI as really a benchmark. That's about 150.
Right.
Here you've got from 1.3, you've got 163. So really you can see how state-of-the-art this engine is. And clearly, I think they're going to be banking a lot of that. And in addition to that, what was also an interesting surprise is they've got a DCT.
Right.
I think we need to talk a little bit on this DCT. This DCT is from Magnum. One would have imagined you would have gone for an 80, which a lot of, but that's the trend these days.
Correct.
Because it's smoothness, you get a little bit of a smooth drive. But this is a wet clutch DCT. So I think with a wet clutch, there are certain benefits. And I think disadvantages mainly a little bit on efficiency, which a dry clutch has. And let's say a dry clutch is a little bit more sportier. But actually, in a way, that's a negative because, we've seen the dry clutch units, even from Hyundai and Kia. It's like a bit of an on-off switch.
They can be snappy.
They are snappy. And why they are snappy is because to minimize the friction,
right?
Exactly. But here you've got, an oil, between, an oil pack between the friction plates. Yeah. So clearly you can calibrate it for, let's say, a little bit more smooth, a little bit more slip.
A little more slip, yeah.
A little bit more slip on the clutch, which in stop and go traffic is much better. So you don't get that on-off kind of feeling in a dry clutch. It's actually deliberate. Right. For, making sure that it doesn't overheat.
Right.
So in a way, a wet clutch is closer to a torque converter than, let's say,
typical dry clutch.
Typical dry clutches. So I think that's going to be interesting. They've got the right transmission, the right engine. That 1.3, I think, is really going to be a benchmark as far as powertrain goes.
Right.
And the 1 liter is from the Kiger.
Yeah, exactly. So that one, of course, is going to be there for the entry starting price.
But I think a big miss is that there's no auto
on the 1 liter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not that, you can get an entry level over there, but then if you want an auto, you have to jump to the more expensive, let's say DCT, which now we'll talk about pricing also in a bit, but, that is quite a jump. And I think that really, I can't understand why, because you had a CVT with the Kiger. Of course, to put that, you can't put that same CVT as is into this. There are different, let's say, vehicle loads. There's a lot different calibration that has to be done. Maybe they didn't have the bandwidth at that time. I don't know whether it will come later. But clearly, they should have had an auto at launch. I mean, the Sierra, they've got it in a very, let's say, an engine which is, in terms of performance, is super mediocre. A very sluggish, slow engine. But even in that, they've given an DC, an auto. Because I think some people just want an automatic, right at the base version, which I think is a miss by not giving it.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. You do have to go up to the 1.3 or the hybrid, which is an auto. And Hormazd, that is what we should talk about, because the hybrid, the strong hybrid, I mean, it's got a 1.8 liter 4-cylinder engine. On its own, it develops 109 horsepower, but it's got two motors. And this is actually unique also, because it's got a 49 horsepower motor and a 20 horsepower integrated starter motor. Total system output is 160. So it is very interesting. And what was interesting for me, Hormazd, is the press release always says the F1 engineers have worked on this, and F1 style, it's quite liberal everywhere. But it genuinely is the case here. I mean, this two motor setup is quite innovative. You've got one motor that does, of course, electric assistance on its own, also electric powering. It can do charging the battery. And then you have the other motor, which is an integrated starter motor,
right,
which starts up the engine when it stops, of course. It also, what it does is it acts as a synchronizer, because the gearbox is a dog clutch or a dog box.
Yeah.
The racing style gearboxes, which I think you and I have driven and do like, they mesh like crazy, like just slam into each other.
Yeah.
So to sort of smoothen that out is what they're using this motor for. So this motor also does that function to sort of act like a synchronizer, smoothen out the shifts. So they've got some very, very interesting tech.
I think for me, the hybrid powertrain is a rabbit out of the hat. That really, I think, Renault has caught everyone by surprise. When everyone's talking of coming in with hybrids, later, whether it's Kia, whether it's Hyundai, whether it's Sierra. And they've not just come in with any old hybrid, they've come in with a very impressive hybrid. I mean, look at the battery size, 1.4 kilowatts.
Exactly. That's almost double what other hybrids use.
The Grand Vitara is. I think Grand Vitara is some 0.76, something like that.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah. So it's thereabouts. So almost double. What does that mean? That means you will be in EV mode for a lot longer. That means phenomenal fuel efficiency.
Exactly.
So I think they're trying to compensate for the lack of diesel by this. But, I think, again, coming back to it, Duster owners aren't looking for efficiency. They are looking for that strong mid-range punch, which the K9K did. But again, after BS6, all diesels have lost that mid-range punch. So that's gone in any case.
But perhaps this might, Hormazd, you think, because you've got the electrical assistance also adding it. So depending how they set it up.
You're right. It could be. I think this could be, let's say. But, it's great in the city. I'm talking about on the outdoors.
On the highway, yeah.
But honestly, the hybrid, to me, most excited about that. And I think a little bit more on the hybrid. It's not a Renault hybrid, though Renault have had a development in it. It's now being produced by a new entity, a relatively new entity called Hormazd Powertrain,
which they and Geely own.
Yeah, it's a 50-50 joint venture between Renault and Geely. I think it was founded in about 2024. And now all the powertrain is going to be developed by them for all the group products. So really, it's like a independent unit technically, which is supplying powertrain to all the Renault brands and Renault-owned brands and the joint ventures which they have here. So it's theoretically, Hormazd could even give it to other OEMs. Right? I don't know if there'll be takers for that, but that really is the business model of Hormazd, is to be a standalone, let's say, a powertrain company. And the big news is, which again, bit of a scoop, is that Hormazd is looking to set up in India. Manufacturing in India, and coming to India and really setting up base here. Challenges, of course, that 50% ownership of a Chinese company, but I think they've got around that, and I think in time we will be seeing announcements that Hormazd Powertrain India will be an entity over here. So I think really gotta hand it to Renault. Really got big plans. I think again, can't say enough that this hybrid engine is something which is going to be really in a way a game changer for this segment, because it's really on spec, let's say, far superior to what Toyota and Maruti are offering.
Absolutely. And Hormazd, since you're on powertrains, I have to also talk about another powertrain which we had on the old Duster, but they haven't announced as yet, is the 4x4. Now, internationally, Hormazd, there are two 4x4s that the Duster does have, the current one. There's a 4x4 with a propeller shaft running to the rear. So it's a proper,
like the older Duster had.
like the old Duster had.
And mind you, on the older Duster, I just want to butt in there and say that we had the older Duster.
You had one, yeah.
We did, in fact, a drive all the way from India to Cambodia, right? And we kept that Duster. And I think what I liked about it more than just the 4x4 was it had even better ride and handling because the rear suspension was independent.
Yeah.
It wasn't the beam axle or the
Yeah.
let's say.
Beam, yeah.
And again, so that to me, from even a ride and handling perspective, the 4x4 was even better than the two-wheel drive, the front-wheel drive, which was great in any case.
True. So, so same here. I mean, this has a 4x4 with a propeller shaft running to the rear. The engine is a different one. It's a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder turbo DI, right? 130 horsepower, and assisted by a mild hybrid also, right? So you do have mild hybrid with a propeller shaft. Interestingly, Renault also have a 4xe, a 4xe, so an electric rear axle. Here you've got the same 1.2 liter engine, of course, but at the rear, instead of a propeller shaft, there is a motor with a 2-speed gearbox.
Yeah.
So you've got, a 2-speed gearbox on an EV, on an electric sort of motor. I see the logic there. It is an off-roader. You do want torque at low speeds, so you can have the lower ratio for that. And of course, for the highway running, you will use the second speed.
Yeah.
Do you think either of these or some version of a 4x4 could come to India?
Well, I think, honestly, what I've heard is that with horse, you could get a 4xe, which is...
so not the 1.2?
No. I think, look, the way the 1.8 is set up, you could easily have rear axle driven with a small electric motor. And I think that is what could come. So if a 4x4 is to come, it will be a 4xe. You will not have the propeller shaft. It will not be driven by just ICE.
Right.
And I think that is the way forward it might be quite costly. But, if they're going to be, let's say, setting up shop here, localizing for exports. Don't forget, the Duster isn't just for India. I mean, for Renault, this is a very, very critical production base. It's going to be really... supplying a lot of parts. And now also with the FTA, which is happening, it makes India as a global production hub, especially feeding into Europe, that much, better.
Right.
So if they're talking eventually of, no duty on components.
On components.
So as it is, duty on components are quite low right now. But I think, so a lot of global opportunities there. And when you have global scale, you can bring these very, let's say, sophisticated and complex componentry here, because the scale would bring down the cost. So I think 4xe, I don't know what you call it, or E4, I'm confused, but let's say a hybrid 4x4, where you have the front wheels driven by the engine and the rear wheels driven only by electric. I think that is a possibility. And I think that is something which, it's not confirmed, but if you look at the way the HR 18 is kind of set up, it's not difficult to kind of, to do that. Yeah.
And Hormazd, interestingly, I forgot to mention the 4xe or the 4xe that they have internationally. While it has, of course, the engine has a mild hybrid assist on the front. It's got a full electric motor, the rear with 2 gearboxes, 2-speed gearbox. And it also has a dual fuel with LPG.
Yeah.
Do you see, I know LPG is not going to happen here, but what is Renault saying about, let's say, CNG or EV even? Because that's something you need.
So I think I had a very good chat with, Vikraman, who's now really taken over as head of engineering, new head of engineering, and asked him this question. So, let's cut to that and hear what he has to say. Vikraman, looking at other powertrain options, any thought on CNG? Maybe you've not thought of it, doesn't fit over here, or some people are looking at CNG, a very obvious thing to do, but sometimes it's difficult with a GDI turbo getting on CNG. So just your thoughts on CNG, and also on range extenders for smaller vehicles. That seems to make sense. From what I understand, you've got a huge product pipeline.
Yeah.
So everything's on the cards, and even finally EVs.
Yeah.
So are all these on the table?
So exactly right. Everything is on the table. What we can see is, at this point of time, we believe that we have the complete and the futuristic product lineup, because we have an affordable turbo 100 and we have a powerful turbo 160, and we have the state of the art, the cutting edge hybrid technology.
Right.
So we have to watch the market, and we have to see, depending upon the market feedback and the customer requirement, we are open for all the new technologies, including the EV, including the range extender, and CNG is something which we have to really see how does it fit into the Duster brand.
Right.
Because some people perceive CNG to be against the sporty nature of the car,
Right.
because it is more of a budget and running cost versus the sporty and agile, because you had a lot of weight on the car with the CNG tank and so on, and with the CNG you have a lower power also.
Right.
So that is something which we have to really see in the market.
So clearly, I think, CNG not on the radar. It doesn't really fit the Duster's DNA.
Right.
Though we've heard that, let's say, Volkswagen, Skoda are evaluating that. Don't forget, it's 22% of the market right now.
Yeah.
But maybe right at the bottom. So not in SUVs that much, but still, it is something you can't ignore. And when you don't have too many options, you try to look at what else you can do. But I think for Renault, it's not a priority. CNG clearly, as we know, and again, doing CNG with a GDI turbo engine is a little tricky. Requires a lot more, let's say, work and calibration and stuff like that. But I think they also have acknowledged that EVs are on the table, but they need to get into EVs fast. Now, what is clear, and I think Renault people have told me this, on the sidelines, is that they cannot meet the latest CAFE. They cannot meet CAFE 3 without any doubt. So they are going to have the hybrid, which will really help in terms of CAFE numbers, and you get super credits of 2 for that. One other benefit which we not talked about is the Bigster, the 7-seater, which will have a hybrid at launch.
Right.
Now the Duster doesn't have the hybrid. It's coming in Diwali. Now, a lot of people saying, oh, it's too late and stuff like that. But I think they need to understand that, you can't just bring a hybrid here without localizing. It takes time, especially if we're going to set up shop here.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's too late because
it's
still early. How many hybrids are there in the market? It's not too late. In fact, it's early.
Right, exactly.
It's a stupid thing to say that they've come too late. By Diwali, it'll be early. They'll still be ahead of Tata, Mahindra, Kia, Hyundai. Yeah. It's only Maruti and Toyota which have been now here for a couple of years. So really, in fact, they're quite early with the hybrid, even if they come in Diwali, which is great. Bigster will have hybrid at launch.
Okay.
No doubt about that. So again, that will help the CAFE numbers, but it's not enough. They will have to have an EV. What the EV is, one can only speculate because they've tried doing a business case with what was that Dacia Spring, I think it was.
Yes, the small hatchback.
Yeah, the hatchback. Right. That didn't work. The only way is to maybe do a quick into the market is an ICE conversion,
right?
Which is with the existing platform. So Duster doesn't make sense, is what I feel, because it's a bit too compact, and fitting in batteries to give it decent range will be a challenge. So I think the smart thing to do would be to electrify the Bigster, which is the 7-seat SUV.
And the larger wheelbase.
And the larger wheelbase, maybe throughout the third row of seats, put in batteries there or whatever, and have, let's say, and all the power electronics for the thing. So that is a possibility of, let's say, electric Bigster to try, and you have to have it to meet the CAFE targets. And that's I think a faster thing to do because the platform is already there.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think, Hormazd, if anyone can do it, then I guess it's Dr. Vikraman, because he's from Mahindra, used to the pace and speed at which they work.
I think, honestly, I've always said that, people make companies before the products do. And I think one has to look at Renault. And I think where they have an edge really is with the team they have over here. Full new team. I mean, let's start with Stefan Deblaise. He really comes from an engineering mindset, production. So he knows what needs to be done. They've kind of poached Vikraman from Mahindra, and I think he's a big asset. Clearly, he's used to the speed and agility, which, used to in Mahindra. And that's what's made Mahindra phenomenal right now, is just the way, in terms of engineering, they've just been able to kind of get things out phenomenally quickly. Has had come at some cost, especially with glitches. But I mean, that you can't kind of deny their pace here. And amazing what they have done. But again, my only worry is, will the Renault ecosystem, the universe, allow, let's say, people like Vikramant to move at the pace they want to move at. Because don't forget, when you're part of a global company, there are a lot of moving parts. Everything's got to align. There are global markets to serve. There are other, let's say, production bases to source from, other production bases supply. So it's all got to interconnect. But clearly, I think, that is one thing Renault will have to kind of, let's say, up the pace. And the sense I'm getting is that they are seriously looking at doing that, because I think in no uncertain way or terms, the head of the Renault brand and the chief growth officer, Fabrice Camboli, said in an interview that they want to launch a new model every year. So that is a pace that clearly that, they want to, let's say, achieve. As I said, they're building the right team. And if you look at what Renault is doing vis-a-vis what the other European brands are doing, because I think that's really the best comparison is, and you can't compare them with the Koreans.
Exactly.
They're too far ahead. They're too deeply ingrained into this ecosystem.
Almost Indian.
Yeah, that's right. And we've talked about it. Top 6 players, 94% of the market. The two Japanese, Toyota, Maruti Suzuki, the 2 Indians, Indian Tata, and of course Kia and Hyundai. They've locked it all out. Who's next? And I think it could be Renault. Because if you see what Volkswagen is doing, they've launched, let's say, the refreshes of the Kushaq, Taigun, but nothing after that. There's nothing been signed off. So they're still struggling for investment. Whereas Renault, they've got a lot already happening. So I think in that sense, Renault is much better placed.
Yeah, absolutely, Hormazd. You're absolutely right. There is a whole new sort of
energy
in there. Yeah, absolutely. Even the marketing team, all fresh, new heads in there, or people elevated, and you can see that happening all around.
I mean, if you look at the launch, that's
fresh thinking,
and that's marketing, and what a bang, it was amazing. I think all of us were pretty awestruck by the scale of the launch.
Exactly.
You just couldn't miss the scale.
Exactly.
And that is really marketing power.
Absolutely, Hormazd. And, but Hormazd, one thing Renault has to do now is double down on the Duster. In the past, they've had, it's not like a company that has never had hits. They've had some great hits, right? We've had, of course, the original Duster. We've had the Kwid, fantastic start. Triber, great product. But they never seem to sort of take that product and carry it forward like a proper relay. It's this one product that they launch and then it's kind of forgotten about. And I think with this new Duster, they really need to take the product, not just the brand, because I can see they're banking on the brand a lot. Like, in Australia, the grill is Renault lettered.
Yeah. Over here
in India, it's Duster. So they know Duster has that currency.
Yeah.
So great, leverage the brand, but I think they really need to double down on the product, right? I mean, they need to have more products and have a proper pipeline.
So they do. I think that's definitely the case. And I think what we know is there's going to be a cadence of products right now. And again, that's what I say, Renault, you can see a cadence of products. Let's say Volkswagen, Skoda, you can't see a cadence of, let's say, these mass products. You might get some CKD stuff and all that. So I think that's why, Renault is best placed to be best of the rest.
Right.
If you get what I'm saying. Even a company like Honda, they are not over there at all, so not yet at least. So I think...
So what's new in terms of products, Hormazd?
I think I think... Obviously, the next one is the 7-seat.
It's the 7-seat, as we know.
Yeah. That's definitely coming. And they announced that, that's what the 600 million euros or dollars, I forget what, went into these two products. So, and I think obviously hybrid was part of it. There's no EV planned yet, but I think they will have to do EV because they were struggling to find, they'll have to do something.
Right.
It's just my speculation. They'll do it on the Bigster. To me, that makes the maximum sense.
Logic.
I don't know how many they'll sell, but they'll have to sell a fair bit. But, with a Bigster EV, a Bigster hybrid, a Duster hybrid, they might just get the cafe targets. They might just meet their cafe targets. And even the 1 liter is pretty, and the other engines are pretty fuel efficient as well. I think the big one after that is going to be a mini Duster, a sub 4 meter Duster. It's not going to be called a Duster, but you can imagine that. Now,
so an upright
exactly. Because I think even they have realized that the Kiger is too much of a crossover.
Right.
And what Indians really like is a boxy, upright stance. And to be honest, we just have to look at the success of the Brezza for that.
Yeah.
The Brezza, what is it? I mean, if you look at it mechanically, very simple. Powertrain, just one. And that to a very mediocre powertrain. But it just does the job efficiently. And I think really it's the silhouette just the concept of the Brezza that has really clicked. And I think that's what they look at doing, with their next SUV, or the third SUV after that, which will be a very compact kind of it'll be a sub 4 meter. And don't forget, now everyone's looking at the sub 4 meter because of the taxation benefit. GST has gone from 28 to 18. So that's really made the focus on that segment. Everyone's looking at it. So I think this will be their next product for sure. I think we'll have other further enhancements. I wouldn't be surprised with the localization of the 1 liter that the Triber will finally get the 1 liter.
The turbo.
Yeah, that's right. The turbo, the 1 liter turbo.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Not the BR10, which they currently have. So that will happen. And I think so. That's going to be, I think, a good cadence of products from Renault going forward. And I think finally, when the FTA comes, you'll be getting some CBUs as well. So I think CBUs really is going to be a nice icing on a cake for the lot of European guys, but the core really will be the products made for India. Made in India, yeah.
And I suppose, Hormazd, let's not forget the Kwid that is still around, and perhaps would it see updates would make sense, I think?
Well, that's what they said. I think, Camboleave said that they're not giving up on the Kwid.
Okay.
It's still got a place. So obviously they're not going to have an all-new Kwid on a new platform. That's not going to make sense. But I think they'll be constantly updating it. Still does decent numbers. It's an entry into the Renault brand. Clearly the Kwid was quite a phenomenon when it came out. Literally rattled Maruti by getting into 5-digit monthly sales at 10,000 plus, which was amazing at that time. So I think Kwid does have a strategic role to play in Renault's model range and in Renault's future ambitions. So I think Kwid, we are not going to see the end of it. It's not going to be phased out in any time soon. Yeah.
Right. So Hormazd, I think that kind of brings us to the end, and we have to discuss pricing. Now, Renault have not announced pricing. We don't know that as yet, but it's going to be in the segment that is obviously fair. But do you think it's going to be competitive, or it's going to actually pull a premium?
So I think, what I understand is that the Renault guys are saying that they are confident of their product. It's going to be competitive, but it's not going to be aggressive.
Okay.
What that means is going to be in line with what the competition is. And, they're confident of, let's say, the way it drives. I think the engine, the HR13, really, as I said earlier, it's really, I think, going to be the benchmark powertrain with that 7-speed DCT. So I think that what they're banking on. But again, Indian consumers in this segment also like a naturally aspirated engine, which they don't have. It's a very, let's say a different kind of mindset which people come in. But I think they're also being realistic and not really going after the, Seltoses and Kretas, which I'm sure they will pull some from there. Right. But just banking on that Duster legacy where the driving dynamics and the way it drove was so special. And they're hoping to kind of, let's say, get that magic back with this powertrain. And, for people who want the entry level, you've got the 1 liter. Right. With the manual. I think that will be very aggressively priced just to get that entry point. No automatic, I think, is a big miss over there. But there's one, let's say, spoiler for Renault. And this is what Renault guys unofficially are also a little worried about, and that is Nissan.
Yes, it is the sister product.
Nissan is, in contrast, in such a mess. I mean, I'll be honest, no proper leadership compared to what Renault has put in right now. And I think out of desperation to kind of get market share, they might undercut the Duster with the Tecton considerably. Now that's a fight that is going to be there. And, I think that's how these alliances play out. And I think they're not, they don't love each other that much. Right. So I think they're going to be absolute all-out war between them in the market. So one doesn't know because Duster's gone first.
Yeah.
They'll announce their price and then Nissan can strategically price it. I think the Tecton will undercut the Duster considerably because that's the only way Nissan can really win back customer trust. They're just right now one product company, which is a Magnite. They've got nothing at all. Of course, they've got the Gravity and all coming.
Right.
But clearly you can say between the two, it's Renault who's got the upper hand. As you said, they've invested a lot, a fresh new team. Engineering empowered over here, engineering developed over here to do things quickly and faster. Really, no European brand has done this so far, or let's say international brand. So I think, it's going to be interesting.
Right. So clearly, then, Hormazd, the Renault, it's far from done and dusted, right?
Absolutely. I think it's far from done and dusted. And I think they've also backed the right horse, which is horsepower. So I think there's a lot going for it. I'm personally very excited to see the Duster. I can't wait to drive it. It was one of my absolute favorite cars. As you said, our car of the year. Very, very special. And I think looking at this Duster also, I think it is going to be, quite a special car to drive. Well, that's all we have on this week's episode of Deep Drive. Do hope you enjoyed watching us, listening to us. And to make sure that you don't miss any of our podcasts, do stay notified by clicking on the bell icon, or you can subscribe to us on Spotify and Apple Podcast and enjoy just listening to us, maybe on your drive to work.